If you think that this time last year no one was talking about artificial intelligence, you'd be wrong. Because she's been on the boat for a long time now, and she'd like to tell you a little bit more about herself, why this matters to her, and why it should matter to you. Leanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Shauna. So, that's a good launching point. So for me, I have always been kind of had this tagline that I've always been an early adopter. Like I got the first iPod as a gift from my dad because I did really well in school, and then I started working out from home when I was 15 years old. Before PayPal was even in the Philippines, there wasn't even such a thing as moving money that quickly here. And I started that as my journey when I was 17, 18. I was doing content creation. I was copywriting. I was doing marketing for people, video editing, graphic, anything I could get my hands on, honestly, to be creative, I did as a job. And then when I was 20, I ended up becoming CEO of this book publishing company all the way in the US. So I became an outsourced CEO, again, was something I wasn't really thought of before, of like, oh, we can do that remotely kind of thing. And about 4 years ago now, and when I was 23, I started my career company 2XU, which is an executive assistant agency where, again, years later, as a chat GPT was rising, as AI was rising, my first thought was like, oh crap, what do we do with my business now? But I'm like, no, this is how we can move forward into it. So it's a big part of like who I am, is like kind of being that early adopter and like being super freaking curious about everything else. So yeah, that's me.
I love that. And curiosity is like the launching point to all things entrepreneurial. So if you
Hmm.
are an entrepreneur and you lack that curiosity, you might be holding yourself back.
Oh
So
yeah,
teaming up with
yeah.
someone like Leanne, who's just obviously innately curious, is going to
Hmm.
take you 17 steps forward. So
Yeah.
it's just absolutely mind blowing. And so now we're talking about AI, and there are so many different AI tools now available to the
Yep.
general public. Whereas before, I mean, there were a few, and many of them even before that were just simply not available to the public, not usable by the public,
Hmm.
until, as we talked about before the show, until about December, when you started
Yeah.
saying, hey, you know what? These tools are not only becoming available to the public, but as entrepreneurs, we should be leveraging them in particular for our marketing.
Hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your thought process when you were putting yourself out there and saying, hey guys, look, this thing exists. Hey, you should be using this. Hello.
Yeah. So for me, it was really at the point. It was. I remember a little bit part of it of like I just celebrated. Okay, I'm now been doing YouTube for the last like 3 years. But this new tool just popped up. Okay, how can I use? How can I do it? And I remember significantly that I signed up before it hit 5,000 users, which was really cool because they just announced like, oh, 5,000 users. Like I have an account already. And then they were hitting like 100,000 within like a week, if I remember right. And then with ChatGPT, it was kind of one of the easiest ways for me to like, oh, this is what it does. And when I was playing around with it, it was like, oh, can it help me brainstorm ideas? Like, oh, can it help me write copy? Like, oh, can it help me? Basically, I was looking at what I was doing day to day for myself, for my own branding. And I was slowly replacing myself. That was kind of the thought in my head of like, okay, can I replace this task? Can I replace this task? So that's basically how everything else started when I was doing all of that. It's just, can I replace this? How about this one? Okay, no, they can't do that yet. And then now, of course, now it can. But it was like that slow test of everything else on my list.
That's amazing. Like truly, when you think about it. And this is something that I've seen a lot of hesitation coming into the
Mm-hmm.
world of AI. And of course, less so and less so as we progress, as it becomes a part of our everyday. I mean, we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing it literally in things that we don't even think about. It's becoming integrated.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
with it becoming more literally habitual, everything is AI intuitive. Um, what would you suggest is the most effective way to use AI when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to running your business and effectively marketing your business?
The number one thing I tell people all the time when they ask me that is to use it as a tool. Like I used the word replace myself earlier, and that's always the fear of people of like, oh, will I be replaced? Like, oh, I have a video on TikTok that has like 300,000 views because I was talking about admin tasks and creative tasks you can replace with ChatGPT. And most of the comments, if not all, were like, oh, guess I'm not doing this job anymore. Like, oh, I guess this is gone. but people fail to see that it is a tool. It will enhance you, basically who you are. And I talk about this all the time of like tools are always a multiplier. You can have the best, Photoshop, top notch, everything. But if you only have the skills of paint or basically lower, then it's never going to be used or utilized basically the way that it should be. So when it comes to thinking of how to use AI tools, ChatGPT, Midjourney, all of these other amazing tools that are coming up, think about it as a tool. Think of it as an enhancer of you to empower you to do better and better at what you do.
Absolutely. And your skills. So here's a really great thing that I've personally been noticing, and I've had to do a lot of, oh, let's call it editing,
Mm-hmm.
of the content and copy that people have been creating using ChatGPT in particular. Um, I laugh because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but truly, it's one of these circumstances when you know when somebody's using it without having that level of skill,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there are certain turns of phrases that the AI bot will create that
Mm-hmm.
it's slightly unnatural for the human
Yep.
writer to create. There's certain nuances that, like, for me, as I come from a very very long training of writing, both professionally and creatively. And here's a little thing that I always encourage my clients to think about is the concept of show don't tell, because AI doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem to get it.
Yep.
AI
Yep.
likes to tell you when something is occurring, and there's a very very big difference in reception when you're reading that, if somebody's telling you it or showing you it. And so these are really, it's really important to be mindful when you're using that. And if you don't have the skills to train chat gpt or to
Mm-hmm.
edit yourself while using it, then you could just flop, right? Like you could just
Yep.
create something and somebody's like, that's obviously a bot.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
it's
that's hard.
Yeah, and it's funny because so many people think like, oh, they'll never tell, but like I can tell within like a heartbeat
Yeah.
of like looking at it, just because like same thing, like years of writing training, copywriting training, all of that good stuff. We could easily tell like, oh no, no, I know. Like I'll have someone submit something to me, or like I read it, and I'm like, this, you made this with ChatGPT, right? I'm like, I'm proud of you for using ChatGPT, but I can easily tell that you did use it. And it that's where kind of like human still is needed. And I'm sure you'll agree to that. Of like, you still need, you use it as a first draft, and I've said this so many times to so many people. Use it as a first draft. Don't use it ever as a final thing.
Absolutely. And so here we are talking about using AI as business owners, as CEOs, and creating your copywriting and creating your content and creating scripts, even. Like you can do so much just with ChatGPT. And
Mm-hmm.
this is just written content. Never mind like
Yeah.
Midjourney, and they're creating images, which are mind blowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then we get to the point where, okay, we've replaced ourselves, as you say. We're able to outsource certain elements of tasks to a bot, but we still need to serve the function of editing and going through these things. As a CEO, we don't necessarily want to wear all of those hats. We don't want to be the person who's putting it into ChatGPT, training ChatGPT, reviewing it, editing it, and getting it ready for use. So, one thing that you advocate for, in fact, are marketing VAs who have the knowledge and skill sets within that space to support you in your business. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that?
So for us, like I said, when I first heard about ChatGPT, when I was playing around with it, the oh crap moment was like, okay, does this mean that I don't have a business anymore, basically? But the answer was basically not right now. Basically, you still have a little bit of a chance to learn and master this. So for us, like I immediately learned it all that I can, and then I created like a mini course for all of our assistants. Um, that was the first thing that I did. It was I remember signing up for ChatGPT December 15, I think, or something somewhere earlier than that, or that's when I released the YouTube video. Anyway, and then in January, right on our first like meeting with everyone else in the team, like, hey, welcome back, happy New Year. This is what ChatGPT is. It was just that I jumped on it because uh, I didn't want them to have the fear that everyone else was going through basically during that period, and two, I wanted them to test the things that I didn't, I wasn't testing because I wasn't doing that as a task for myself. They're doing it for their clients. So I encourage that because one, for VAs or virtual assistants where English is not their first language, it is the perfect way to cross that barrier. It's the perfect way to like have something to start with, versus them kind of like translating or finding if this word is good, or like very, or second guessing or overthinking basically if this is the right thing. It bridges that gap. That's kind of the beautiful thing that I found with ChatGPT is now it's easier for me to train marketers because they can cross that gap of like I don't have to, you know, always just check Grammarly if what I wrote was right. The second thing is it becomes this like I'm right now writing a book on how to basically be more productive in an assistant. I use ChatGPT almost all the freaking time. I don't have writer's block anymore. That's the other thing that I found with ChatGPT. So, like for our assistants, if they're stuck on creating content for their clients, they can ask ChatGPT, like, "Hey, can you create a 7-day content calendar for me?" And then, even if, of course, they're going to go ahead and edit it, but at least they are not staring at a blank page anymore. So those were the kind of the two main things that why I advocate so much for it is because it becomes this way for your assistant to not just be another assistant you just hired off of Upwork or somewhere else. It becomes this assistant for you who learns AI, who masters AI for you, so you don't even have to even.
That's amazing. So what I'm hearing actually is using ChatGPT or any sort of AI, like there's Midjourney, there's isn't there, I can't remember all the names, but there's so many.
There's so
Using,
many.
using any of them, right? I think Jasper was
Mhm.
the one I was thinking of. There's Jasper and
Mm.
um
Copy AI. Yeah,
yeah,
there's so many.
yeah.
Yeah.
So using all these for yourself and for your team in particular, we're creating inclusivity, which is
Mm-hmm.
huge, massive. We're saving time
Mm-hmm.
because we're not sitting there stewing. We're saving energy because we're not stressed about the next thing that we need to do. Like
Yep.
that's for me alone, that's reason enough to dive in head first. I was there. I was not as early an adopter as you were. I would say I was in the springtime and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, guys, I hear you. I got you. And I went in and I dabbled and then I loved it. But still,
Mm-hmm.
like that alone, I don't need to sit and stress about something. Like I have all of these ideas in my brain, and if anybody's been around for long enough, I'll tell you that my ideas come like fireworks because one just starts bursting off into the
Yep.
others, and it
Mm-hmm.
to have to get that on paper is a task in and of itself, and I can do that. That's fine. Okay, then I get it there, but then I've got to sit down and organize it, and then I've got to make connections. Well, guess what? ChatGPT will help me do that. Like
Yep.
it's so cool to just word vomit on a page and say, ChatGPT, please organize these thoughts for me. And then he or she says, they say, here are the thematic relations between your ideas and blah 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 blah. And you're like, dude, listen, you're my friend, and we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So this is huge. We're inclusive, we're saving time, and we're saving energy. Which leads me to the next kind of concept is if you don't use this, number one, you're going to be behind the times, right? Everybody else is going
Yeah.
to be working a lot
Oh
faster
yeah.
than you are. You're just going to be like, well, what the hell? But it's more
Yep.
than that. It's more than, because some people will say, oh, it's too to principle and I want human centered and all this jazz. But my question is like, are you really human centered if you're burning out or if your team's
Yep.
burning out? Like
Mm-hmm.
this is how can you keep up? And I'm not saying that you have to keep up per se. It's not a race, but how
Oh
can
yeah.
you stay present if you're always worrying and stressing about the next thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I know that this is something that's really near and dear to your heart. Can you tell me a little bit more about your advocacies in the mental health space and what using a marketing VA and AI will do to help businesses on the inside as well?
It's funny that you open it up in that way of like combining AI and mental health, because literally the other day I came across a video of like how to turn ChatGPT into your um, therapist, and I've been
Ooh.
trying it out the last couple of days, and it's like I went to therapy for I think a solid 2 years. Was it? It was straight, and then a little bit of the pandemic, and it was weird. Try and do it in Zoom. I prefer like the in person thing, but I learned like CBT. I learned like how like rephrasing things within myself. Um, and like because I found that video of like, okay, this is how you can have ChatGPT do this for you. You can have it listed out. And lately, I've been kind of using it to kind of make myself a little bit sane. So the way I've been doing it is like I'll ask it like, "Hey, I've been feeling this way using like the CBT method or some other method that I know because I basically wrote so much notes from with my therapist. This framework, can you help me write through how I can like journal about this?" And it just has helped me so much in like keeping me on that track of like just yesterday I got the feedback. We had this session with my executives, and they were like, "Oh, I've noticed sometimes the end that you have a little bit of a superiority complex, but I don't think you notice it." I'm like, I asked ChatGPT how I can like
Ooh.
rewrite that in my head, and it gave me like, okay, write yourself these affirmations, rewire yourself with these thoughts. So on that side, just because it just is recent, that's one of the ways that I've been using ChatGPT to take care of myself. And then the other flip side of it, and like actual work, for our own assistants, I just use them as an example. The other day, I had someone say like, "Oh, I now have content enough for 6 months, for a client," and I was like, 6 months, you say? I'm usually like a month ahead for myself, but for them, they're not going to be stressing out 6 months later about that because they've now planned it out ahead of them. Now they'll edit it, they'll make it better, they make it make sense for what's current for that client or for what's current for that industry. But at least they don't have to start from that scratch. They don't have to burn themselves out on trying to figuring it out. The other way is a lot of our inside of 2XU as our team and also for our EAs, they've used it as a platform also for them to brainstorm ideas of like, hey, I have this idea I want to give to my client, but I'm not sure how to say it. Can you help me? So instead of them kind of overthinking, ruminating, stressing about it, they have a kind of an unbiased brainstorm buddy to go back and forth. So then at the very end, they have like a cohesive, okay, now I can present this to my client. I now can, or I now know how to ask for help for this because ChatGPT was
Right.
able to do that for me. So that's kind of the different ways. One is like that funny, just because that's like within the last week of like, oh, I can use ChatGPT a little bit for my own therapy. And also the other side of like just saving someone the mental space so then they have space to do the other things that they might enjoy more versus like this grueling other thing.
You know what? That's funny that you say saving yourself the mental space, because what I wrote down was mind clutter. Because it's truly
Mm-hmm.
like it just, you're able to clear out the mind clutter. And
Yeah.
that way, this is something that I advocate for all the time, is making all of your necessary everyday repeat choices beforehand to
Mm-hmm.
eliminate choice overwhelm, because that's what
Yep.
gets us. Like in the end, that's usually what gets us, because we overthink things. But if you've already made the choice, like for example, this is a very basic choice that I made quite a while ago now. I want to say it was at least at the beginning of this year. I said, you know what? I'm going to let it be okay that I don't wear jeans anymore. It sounds silly. It sounds silly, but I would stress about it. I'd
Yeah.
be like, well, I haven't worn my jeans in a while. I've been wearing yoga pants all the time. And like, why? Why do I care? Why does this matter? It doesn't matter. I'm
Mm-hmm.
cozy in yoga pants. I wear yoga pants. So if somebody thinks of Shauna, they're gonna think yoga pants, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I let that be okay. And that was one choice that was able to leave my mind.
Is
I don't need to worry
mm-hmm.
about it. I just know the first thing I reach for is yoga pants because it's okay. And so
I love that.
doing something like this is the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Let's get some of those choices out of the way, some of that mind clutter out of the way so that you can think more clearly. Now I know, and other things too, like what do I do after I drop my kids off from school? Well, I go for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
It's not I go home and I do, well, should I start with this? Should I? No, 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 no. The same with your tasks for the day. I always have my agenda here, and it's written
Mm-hmm.
out. What are the 3 things that I need to get done today in order of importance? It's
Yep.
already chosen. Past me chose it so that present me could just do it.
Yep.
And this is what ChatGPT can do for you. And the thing is, if you don't put in these things, you risk some pretty serious mental health problems. You risk falling into bad states, right? Burnout. What people will say burnout. Well, what does burnout look like? Burnout looks like not functioning at your best capacity. Sometimes
Yeah.
not functioning at all. Sometimes if you already have pre-existing mental health conditions, you can fall back into depression, fall into an anxiety cycle. You can get into a loop of who knows what, right? Or maybe you just
Mm-hmm.
get into a slump and you just don't feel like yourself. Those, you can't possibly market yourself effectively, serve your clients the way I know you can, if you don't take advantage of these tools that will help you to clear the mind junk and
Yeah.
just move forward with more abundance. So yes, absolutely. I mean, you and I both, Leanne, are just here to say, hop on board. Like, if you're not already, if you need some support, grab a marketing VA, somebody who has understanding of the AI world, and save yourself from yourself
Yep.
by really embracing the next step and becoming a master in this space. Because truly, as you just said, you can literally use it for copywriting, image creation, content creation, strategy creation, and therapy.
Hmm. Yeah.
And therapy. So yes,
That was a new find, but end therapy.
it's amazing though. It's really, and this is just the beginning. So with
Mhm.
that, Leanne, I want to invite you to share your final thoughts, some sugar on top, whatever feels right to you, and then of course tell people where they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, would love to. So the main thing I always tell people is like whenever it comes to the topic of AI or mental health, to be honest, and I love that it can be used for both, is I talk about like small steps matters. Like if you're scared of like using AI, just sign up for Chat GPT. You can start using it yet tomorrow. Sign up. Okay, now you can use your first chat. You can use the prompts that are on there, so on and so forth, until you get to the point where you are comfortable. And same thing with taking care of yourself. Start with going for a walk. Start for putting a decision to put into a little bit of love towards yourself throughout the day, and everything else can fall into it. And the same thing with hiring maybe yourself an assistant. Right now we're flashing the scorecard basically that we have. It's basically to assess if you are ready for assistant in the first place anyway, because a lot of people are like, oh, I need this person, but you have to be at a certain point within yourself to know that you're ready for an assistant. So that's a small step that you can do, is going through the 2xc.com/scorecard. That's basically our main way to see if you're ready. And for where else to find me, I am literally everywhere. I am on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. I'm on what was the other one? Threads, basically, that came out that didn't really launch well, but I'm still on it, and I'm always open and love getting messages from people who just ask questions. So yeah.
And keep in mind, everyone, that the link that we're sharing here that Leanne just announced is also in the show notes. So you can click that to see if you're even ready to scale with a VA, because it is important to be ready. I tell you, I went through that journey myself, and it's a journey. So with that, I just want to thank you, Leanne, for being on the show, for contributing to this discussion that I know a lot of people are curious about in the world of AI. And I want to encourage you all to join us every week. We have at least one of these conversations each week, usually two. So you want to subscribe, you want to follow so that you know when the next ones are coming up. I hope that you take the chance today to dive into the world of AI to see how it can lessen your load, and I don't know, play with it a little bit. Use it for therapy, whatever the heck floats your boat. With that, we'll chat soon. See you later.